Hello, hello, hello. It is Sherry Weiss, and I decided to make the December meeting digital through Google Classroom, just so that way I could save some of you all a trip to Bedford, but still get you the material that you need about working with students, and also to just kind of model how you can very easily create videos and embed them into Google Classroom for your students to view content or review material. So what we're going to be looking at today is working with students, and you received the book Discipline Strategies for the Classroom Working with Students by Dr. Ruby Payne at our Thinking Maps training. And if you did not attend the Thinking Maps training and have to make that up next year, I went ahead and sent you a copy of Working with Students through the courier. So hopefully you have gotten that. If not, it'll be coming through the courier very soon to your school. But the book really kind of builds on what we started to look at in October when we heard from Dr. Josh Cornett, the principal of Stanton River High School, and he shared things about voice and which voice that we engage students, and we're going to talk more about that today. He talked about deposits and withdrawals, thinking about our interactions with students very similarly to how we think about a bank account, and that some kids hardly ever get any deposits, and that we may be the only deposit that they ever get within the day. So really making a concerted effort to add those deposits. So we know that here we are. That's the reality. Again, I sometimes show you this chart not to be a pessimist, but just to honor where you are and honor what the research shows us. Whether you're a first year or 20-year veteran, you're still a first year in Bedford County, and so you're adjusting to a new county and new expectations and new people and a new administrator and all these different changes. And so we know, as you well know better than me, you are probably in the disillusionment phase right now. And so what does that mean? What are some of the things that you are feeling? Probably you're a little bit disenchanted. You're feeling like, why did I ever leave my other division? Why am I putting in so many hours for lesson planning and grading? You've probably already gotten sick at least once this school year. You may be questioning your commitment to this job, the competence level that you have. You're stressed out. But the good news is that the next phase is rejuvenation. And, after winter break, that allows you to kind of get caught up on your organizing and your lesson planning. You've had one semester under your belt, so you kind of understand the nuts and bolts of Bedford County. Half the year is done, so you kind of have that distinctive marker you can see some real progress and hopefully start to reflect on all that you have accomplished. Because even though we've all had failures in our practice, we've all had tremendous successes. As I've been in your classrooms, I've seen some amazing hands-on, student-led, engaging activities. And we start to kind of think about long-term planning when we get in the rejuvenation phase. And think about how maybe we can tie our content together with other content areas, whether it's through cross-curricular connections or through themes. Maybe thinking about personalizing, which is what we'll be looking at our next meeting topic in January. So what is our objective for the day? So individually, since you'll be doing it independently through Google Classroom, you're going to reflect on your own classroom management system and look at some specific strategies that apply to your grade band that are contained within the text working with students. So again, you will need to use that text to complete the assignments that correlate with this video in Google Classroom. The goal, of course, the bigger picture, is to create an environment that meets the individual needs and interests of our students. We want to ultimately promote student learning and student achievement. That's why we're all in this game. And what's that measurable component? When I can identify 3 modifications that you want to make in your classroom, that'll kind of be your exit ticket within the classroom, is what are 3 specific changes that you hope to make going into second semester. So again, just to kind of remind us of some of the expectations about a daily objective. Yes, we want them to be visibly displayed in the classroom, but more importantly, we want to open up our lesson by telling kids what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, why it matters, and what's their goal for the lesson. Kind of what target are they shooting for. And so we really want to think about making sure that we include those 3 components within our objective each time. So again, just to kind of do a quick review, there are the specific behaviors that we're going to be doing. We're going to reflect on our practice, and we're going to also examine specific strategies within the text. We're going to be doing that individually, and then the measurable piece is to identify 3 specific modifications. Okay, and then of course that "so that I can," we already said, is that big picture. How does it fit into what we've talked about before, what we're going to talk about later? And so again, this lesson that we're talking about today in our meeting really builds on what Dr. Cornett introduced with kind of classroom management strategies. So what are the things that I just invite you to think about as we're looking at discipline strategies? How many referrals have you written? How many positive parent contacts have you made? I know at Liberty High School when I was there, we had postcards, really simple, had a picture of Liberty High School in the front, and we were asked to mail out at least 10 in 9 weeks. And they were great. We addressed them to the student, sent them to the kids, and just said thank you for something that they had done in the classroom, a behavior they had exhibited, or some work that they had produced, just to kind of give specific praise to a student so that the parent could also see it. And then also thinking about negative parent contacts. If you say, "I'm going to call your parent," or you're actually following up on it. And have you already made a positive parent contact before, so you've started to build that relationship with parents, or are you always only contacting them for the negative? We want to make sure that we're contacting parents, whether we're using Classroom Dojo. I know lots of elementary teachers are using Classroom Dojo. But whatever mechanism you're using to communicate with parents, are you communicating both the positive and the negative, or are they only hearing from you when there's a concern or when there's a problem with their child? So if you'll turn to page 2 in your text, Working with Students, that page kind of really asks you to assess your current system and kind of use it as a checklist and think about what elements from the chart do you have kind of clear procedures and expectations, routines in your classroom, and what elements might be missing in your classroom. And then there's a task within the Google Classroom that kind of asks you to reflect on that piece. Individual students, when we think about what that looks like, 90% of our discipline comes from 10% of our students when we kind of look at the whole school. And so sometimes we get overwhelmed by our discipline data or PBIS teams, which are trying to create those positive behavioral incentive systems. Sometimes we get overwhelmed by our number of referrals and how many kids we have in in-school suspension, or how many kids are out of school suspension, or how many kids are being sent to the principal's office. But we really need to kind of keep it into perspective that the overwhelming majority of our kids are doing what we ask them to do. They're meeting their behavioral expectations. And so we just want to I think that number's important to keep it all into perspective. And when you look on page 4 and 5 in the text, and Dr. Cornett touched on this just briefly in his presentation, but that just kind of lets you take a few minutes to flesh it out in more detail. So just make sure you take time to look at that chart and think about, especially some of the kids that you sometimes have some behavioral concerns with. Who are they? Are they an arguer? Do they always want to be right? And so if so, what kind of intervention could you possibly put into the classroom structure? Could you build in a debate or an activity where they're asked to rank the causes of Order 1 and they get to kind of argue about why they think this cause is more important than another cause? Do you have a student who's silent, who doesn't ever want to verbally communicate with you or their peers? When you give kids the opportunity to work in pairs, they always want to work alone. And so really thinking about how you can make a conscious effort to call on that student. Maybe when it is kind of a low-risk question, when it is just a basic recall question, not one of those higher cognitive processes, so that way they can be successful when they're answering a question orally. So again, just take some time to look through 4 and 5 and think about the kiddos, the 1 or 2 kiddos who you're having a real concern with. Do they fit into one of these types? And obviously these are based on broad generalizations. But what are they possibly looking for? What are they wanting? And then what interventions may work? Obviously, none of them are a perfect fix that are going to work every single time because each child is an individual. But it's based on research of known strategies that have been successful. Again, thinking about parents. Parents are a huge factor of what we do in the classroom. And what I think it's always great to remember is they send the best they've got. This student, no matter whether they're your star student or the pain in your rear end, they are that parent's shining jewel. And so we need to treat them like that shining jewel. And so just thinking about, what is this child's parent like? Are they overprotective? Do they hands off? Are they concerned but kind of appropriately concerned? They contact you when necessary, but other than that, they're not micromanaging what their child is doing. Are they completely unavailable? You don't have a working phone number for them. They don't respond to emails. They don't come to parent-teacher conferences. Or you know that they care, but they just really don't have the resources to help. They're an under-resourced family and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to help their child complete their math homework. They don't have internet access at home, and so they want their kid to perform well and want them to do homework, but they just don't know how to help. And so you want to kind of brainstorm and think about a kid that you're having concerns with. What category does their parent fall into, and what might be an effective strategy? Does the parent need to be told what kind of resources they could have access to? Maybe they help them realize what community resources that they have access to, whether it's a library, that sort of thing. And then another great resource that Dr. Payne offers in her book is on page 7, and I've loaded a hard copy of this that you could print off very easily in the Google Classroom. And this is sometimes great if you know you're going to have a tense parent-teacher conference, whether it's a phone call or face-to-face. This just kind of helps in your pre-planning. It just helps you to prepare, collect your thoughts, figuring out what data you want to have at the table, what questions do you need to ask, what issues you want to make sure to get concerned that you all don't get derailed and go down some rabbit trail and you don't ever address the real concerns. And then what follow-up strategies are going to be implemented. What's the next steps? Do we have a definitive action that from this meeting I'm going to do, the student's going to do, the parent's going to do? And so, again, not that you would want to fill that out for every single time you have a parent-teacher conference, but especially if you know it could be particularly hostile, that can be a great tool to use. So what are our erred approaches to discipline? Typically a teacher, again, these are generalizations, but kind of fall into 3 broad categories about what we believe and kind of what our style is. And so some believe that behavior is caused by thinking, and so we use more of a cognitive approach. Some believe that behavior is developmental, and so I want to teach you a new behavior. This behavior is wrong, this is unacceptable, so let me teach you what you should do instead. And then some people believe that behavior is strictly a learned response to prior stimuli, and so every time that stimuli is presented, the student or the individual will always respond in the same way. So when I see a green light, I'm always going to accelerate in my vehicle. That it's just a learned response to that same stimuli. Every time I see a green light, I'm going to accelerate rather than press the brake. And then there's 3 main discipline styles. Are you more authoritarian? Are you more permissive? Or are you more negotiated? And we usually fluctuate between these 3. Doesn't mean that, you're one and done, that you're always very, very permissive. But we do want to think about that. So an example of an authoritarian style is no talking. We need to work silently because I said so. It's just, I'm the authority figure. I ask you not to talk. You shouldn't talk. Plain and simple. I'm the authority figure. You should respect that. The permissive discipline style thinks that I'm going to get the desired behaviors from students if I am friendly with them, if I am liked. And then the negotiated style kind of is a give and take relationship with students. And so, you want to go to the bathroom? Absolutely, you can go to the bathroom as soon as I see you do 3 math problems. Because so far you haven't been very productive. So as soon as I see you get 3 math problems done, you can absolutely take the pass and go to the bathroom. And so it's kind of that telling kids clear expectations and what you're going to do and what you expect them to do in return. So I think that's kind of a good place to pause. And then the second video for this series will look at use of voice and how we can reframe behaviors and how our nonverbals can impact student behavior.